I have a little headless guitar I've been making for years called the Pilot, and a few months back I had a client ask me if I could make one even smaller than this very small guitar that's designed originally for a pilot so they can travel with it. So using that design, I made this new one. It's his was a 24-inch scale, and I actually called it the Co-Pilot because, you know, smaller than the Pilot. Actually, I have this one here. In the process of making his, which I did not film, I made this one to do a bunch of test cuts, and this one's actually 24 3/4-inch scale, and it is available for sale over at newperspectivesmusic.com if you dig it. I think it's a pretty cool little guitar. So I kind of made this one to do all the risky cuts first that I hadn't tried yet before making the clients. Then I finished it up, put it on the website, and he loved his guitar so much he asked me if I could make him another one, but we wanted to make a few changes to the design. But more importantly, he wants this to be his dream guitar because he's always dreamed of having a guitar with 0% wood in it. Now, longtime viewers of my channel know that I like making guitars with 0% wood in them, and I've got 3 or 4 videos already up of guitars like that, so I'm excited to do it again with this other style guitar. But we're not going to make the whole thing today in this video because there's a lot to think about and a lot to do before I get to actually making this guitar. So today we're going to design it and talk about it and just basically get started. So come with me on the 0% wood adventure. Nowadays, all my designing starts in Vectric software. Well, it starts sometimes with a client's, cocktail napkin sketch or an idea of my own, but I do all the preliminary designing in Vectric because I can get all of my 2D vectors and then create my 3D parts right into the same software. So here you can see all of the, geometry has been done and the cuts have been planned in the software. We have a couple different files. There's like the master file that I designed the guitar, and then there's one file for each part. Here we have the fingerboard, which I'm going to put some holes through to do some indexing. And then we're going to fill those in later because the client doesn't want any position markers. There's our neck blank, which is made from aluminum, which you can see those index holes, and I've created a bunch of tool paths that I need to experiment with before actually doing it. But it's all in one package thanks to this new Vectric software where I can actually have all these components together in the same file. Once I had all the basic shapes close enough to look at, I cut them out of a piece of cardboard that I have on hand for making my guinea pig tanks and assembled, and I saw like a mistake there that I needed to fix. But this is a great way and an inexpensive way to start really bringing your idea into the real world and see how everything lines up. Then I can see some little tweaks I might need to make, like, oh, this hole should be over there, or this part's a little bit too big. But now let's take a look at the materials I'm going to use for the actual guitar. This is a 12 by 12 inch by 1 inch thick rich light blank. That's going to be the main part of the body. Then we're going to bolt on this aluminum neck on top of that, and we're going to use rich light also for the fingerboard. So the whole guitar is going to be basically aluminum and rich light. Then there will also be basically an aluminum pickguard as well as an aluminum back plate to add a little thickness. But before I do any of that, I want to do some test cuts in wood. But before I do test cuts in wood, I also wanted to do some test cuts in aluminum because this is the part that I was the most nervous about, and it's been a long time since I've done any aluminum milling on my CNC, and I had to kind of re-remember how to do it. So here you can see my first attempt. I was being too aggressive, and you can see that the block that I have two-sided tape down started to lift up on me, so I knew I had to go back and cut a little bit shallower. And I also wasn't seeing the chips that I wanted to see. I was getting these stringy pieces of aluminum, which is a sign that, things aren't cutting the way I want it. So what I had misremembered was I was going too slow with the cutter and also just a little bit too deep. So when I sped up the cutter and made the passes a little shallower and then also used some coolant, I started to get the chips that I like to see. I don't like to clean them up, but I like to see them, and this means that I'm getting good, clean, precise cuts. One thing that's kind of convenient about these particular cuts is that since I'm right now making this neck shape, I can actually sort of fill those troughs that are being formed there with, I'm just using WD-40, so I can keep a little bit of coolant in there and don't have to stand there and keep spraying the whole time. And I forgot what a pain in the neck it is cleaning up the aluminum. I don't have my dust collection on because I don't want to suck that up into my wood chips. I like to dump the wood chips out in the woods instead of throwing them away. So I put some paper down to kind of help with cleanup in the future, and then I started running my finishing tool paths, and that first one was going sort of horizontally, and I didn't like how the end mill was trapped in that lower part, so I changed it to this vertical back and forth motion, which felt safer and less likely to break a bit. And I did it like that first time, just straight up like 90-degree angle, and then I thought I'd try a 45-degree angle to see if I like that better, and I don't know if there's any benefits to that for this particular carving. Commercial time, and if you don't know this by now, I don't really do commercials unless they are for some friends of mine or for me, and this one is for me. I sold out of these hats a long time ago, so I thought it was time to make a new one, and these are the new hats available over at newperspectivesmusic.com. I do limited runs of them with a local printer named Microprint, and this one I decided to go black this time, focus, instead of white, because the white just got too dirty, and I really like this hat a lot. It's a legacy cap, and we did a different style. Instead of an embroidery, this is a print of one of my original logos. When my friend Rob Ray, called Shimmering Trash Pile on Instagram, drew this picture for me. He's playing one of my early design guitars, the Belarusian, and then I cut out all these letters actually out of magazines and stuff, and actually did this all old school and then scanned it in, and we've been using that graphic for years off and on in some of my flyers and stuff. Actually, it's on the side of my truck right now as we speak, and I thought it'd be pretty cool to put on a hat, and so Microprint was able to do that. We have a small limited run of these hats over at newperspectivesmusic.com, so if you want to get one now, because they're probably going to sell out pretty quick, and depending upon how quick they sell out, maybe I'll make another batch, maybe I won't, so you may never get to get one of these again. newperspectivesmusic.com. Oh yeah, back to the, I want this to come off the CNC as close to finish as possible, but there's always going to be sanding involved. So I started with my palm sander, just sanding up to about 400 grit, and then I switched to hand sanding up to about 2000 grit before going over to the buffer and polishing this up. And I was pretty pleased with the results. I was happy to see that I could actually obtain a mirror finish. I just did half of it so you could see the comparison. Now satisfied that I knew what kind of tool paths to create, I set out to test those cuts in a piece of wood. And so what I did was I used my aluminum settings on the wood to just make sure nothing weird was going to happen, which meant it took forever of going slow and very shallow passes. Like normally on wood I could cut a lot faster and a lot deeper. And after a while that I saw everything was working okay, I actually manually sped it up to a little bit faster, but still way slower than wood would normally go. And then the Rich Light cuts pretty much like normal wood, so those tool paths were pretty similar to what I would have done for this block of wood anyways, and that all went pretty well. So here's a recap of the process. It obviously starts with a design in the computer, which then we basically take right off the page of the computer and bring into the real world in cardboard. That goes right about there. We kind of make sure everything is looking the way we want it to look. And then once we do that, I move into some materials that I could actually make a guitar out of, which will probably get finished. And we can really see how all the three-dimensional stuff works and how all the cuts work, the tool paths, if there's going to be any problems putting it together. I'll have to cut a fingerboard later, which I'll cut maybe from that. And then, of course, now that we're satisfied that everything is going to work, and we've also done some test cuts on test materials that we're less comfortable with, we can move into the actual material that we'll be using with a little bit more confidence that we won't screw up these expensive things. So I'm excited to get going. And just this little test cut gave me the confidence to know that I can do it. It's going to take a long time. It's going to be a lot of work, which I planned on. But I feel very confident that I can make an aluminum neck to the desired fit and finish, as well as the quality and whatnot. And then the other thing about the neck, of course, is that when I make the actual neck, it will be aluminum. So when I go to do my threaded inserts, I don't actually have to do threaded inserts. I can just tap the aluminum, which I did some tests on, and they're fine. So I have plenty of room here on the aluminum one to do that, but on this wooden one I had to go in and put threaded inserts, so I couldn't just tap the wood, and it got a little bit ugly, but that's all. I gotta just clean this all up a little bit. It should be fine, and if it's not, I'll probably just cut another neck and maybe finish that guitar later. This guitar probably won't get finished beyond here until after the clients, unless one of you is interested, and you could drop me a line and then we could discuss how you would like it. But these are test cuts, and it's an acceptable risk at loss on these materials over the much more expensive and time-consuming aluminum. So feeling pretty good about it. This is all going up in basically real time. So normally when I put these videos up, they're already done and I know what's going to happen, but right now I don't know what's going to happen. There's still all sorts of things that could screw up and make go wrong with this. So stick around, stay tuned for the next installment.